Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. So this is going to be a bit of a controversial movie week. So I have a few movies to talk about, neither of which are particularly well received. But to start off today's show, I'm going to review the film Folie, Deux, and in the second half, I'll be reviewing the movie Megalopolis. But first off, with Folie, Deux, I want to start off by saying I am someone who loves the first Joker movie from 2019. It's a great film. It's probably one of my favorite comic book movies ever. I mean, not that it actually is really a comic book movie. It's more of a drama at the core of it, but it's such a good movie. It's very well directed by Todd Phillips. It has some great ideas, some that I can't believe weren't done sooner. Like this idea that Joker's laugh is a condition he has that he can't control, and so it's like a lot of the movie he'll just be laughing, but he's not really thinking anything's funny, and that kind of just adds to the tragedy of this character in Arthur in the first film. But it's so good, and then he has that moment where he wipes the blood smile on him. That's another very iconic moment to me. Great idea. And just this idea that Arthur as a character is a very unreliable narrator in that you see things in a fantastical point of view and you don't know what's real by the end of the movie. The first time you watch the first Joker, you're kind of I don't really know what's real. At least in 2019 you didn't because, we didn't have a sequel to back anything up. But it was just such a good movie, and it had a fantastic lead performance by Joaquin Phoenix. Seriously, one of the all-time great performances. I think the fact that he can even match Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight is a huge accomplishment for him. I mean, you can pick which one you think is better. I think they're both honestly terrific. But Joaquin Phoenix just absolutely nails this character. And he's not totally Joker as we know him from the comics, but just for this movie, what this movie needed for Joker, he is an excellent character. I also just think the first film has a beautiful score. It actually won Best Score at the Oscars, and jaw-dropping cinematography. It's one of the most beautiful looking movies probably in the last 10 years, in my opinion. I mean, I just love the way the first film looks. But anywho, going into this film, Folie, Deux, I was very skeptical going in because in addition to the, let's just call it lackluster reception this movie's gotten in the last few weeks, I mean, let's be honest, it premiered at a festival a month ago, got pretty mixed to positive reception, but it was really either you loved it or you hated it. Over the last few weeks, though, it's been dropping steadily. More people are hating it. Audiences despise it. I mean, this is the lowest scoring movie, I believe, any comic book movie on CinemaScore, which is a real accomplishment, not in the way you want, but I never thought the first movie needed a sequel in the first place. I did not see a purpose for it. I mean, of course, it made $1 billion at the box office, over $1 billion. And of course, if you make over $1 billion, no matter how much your movie does not warrant a sequel, studio executives want a sequel after that because they want money. But you know what? I didn't think it needed a sequel. It had an ambiguous ending, but it was a satisfying ending. So, I don't know. I was curious to see how this one was. And they announced this movie, the sequel would be a musical and have Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. Honestly, those things got me interested. I know some people, the musical aspect, I know some people got that turned off for them. They were just a musical? I don't want that. To me, that honestly made it sound more interesting because I think if you really pay attention in the first movie, and I'm not saying you have to analyze it crazy, but if you just even watch it again, you'll notice that music plays a very big part of Arthur's character. He's always dancing to music. He has music play. The music in the movie even just really emphasizes how Arthur feels, and even sings at the end a little bit, just a tiny bit, but it's kind of a hint at that he does singing, and music plays a very important part to him. He's dancing in the bathroom. That very famous bathroom dance scene is just kind of, again, music is in his soul. So I don't think it's a problem to make a musical. That's a bit of a tangent, but I don't really have a problem with this movie being a musical for that reason. I think it fits in what the first movie set up. I don't think it's a really jarring tonal decision of any kind, so I just want to get that out of the way. But I love Lady Gaga. I was very excited to see what she would do as Harley Quinn. And, alright, let's just get into the nitty-gritty of this movie. Everything on a technical level that was good about the first film is once again great here. The acting. Joaquin Phoenix, excellent performance. He's maybe not quite on the same level as the first film just because of a shock factor a little bit, and he has a bit more to do in the first film that is a bit more challenging. But, this film, he has a lot more energy to bring. He has to dance and sing and do all that stuff. So, very good performance on Joaquin Phoenix's part. So, great job from him. The cinematography is beautiful. I think it's a beautiful looking movie. Even just shots of like the Arkham Asylum hallways. It's just as good as you remember in the first film. It really stands out. The score is once again great. Not a lot of new stuff here really in that regard. That's kind of just taking a bit of like an enhancement on the first film, but still very good. Just as good as I remembered it. Production design and lighting are again great here. Some of the best of the year, and I love the way the movie looks. But, that's the technical stuff. I think this movie becomes a bit harder to talk about once you kind of get into the real meat of it. And that's where I want to talk about the musical aspect of it. Which I just mentioned. Again, I don't have a problem with it being a musical, but the music here is a mixed bag. I could sometimes see what the director, Todd Phillips, was going for. You know, uh, again, the music in the first film played a big part. The idea of fantasy is another thing. Like, we're always in Arthur's head, misdirection, unreliable narrator. You're just kind of seeing things from his point of view, and that worked for me. I think that's a very logical place to go. But other times it just seemed pointless. Again, especially really in the second half is where I noticed that it became a bit redundant. Like, it was just random singing, kind of dull sequences that weren't really getting anywhere. Like, there's just one song, and it's not a spoiler of any kind. They're just talking about building a mountain, and it's like, it goes on for several minutes, and I'm just like, what did this have to contribute to the rest of the film? What is happening here that, I needed to have a whole sequence for? Nothing. Like, at the end of you could have went to the bathroom, come back, you wouldn't have missed anything. It's just a very pointless sequence, and sometimes it's about half the time that it really felt that way. Half the time it kind of worked. There were only maybe two or three musical numbers that I thought were really effective, but the rest were just not warranted at all. But, besides that, I enjoyed the first 30 minutes or so. Honestly, for the first, 20, 30 minutes, I was thinking, like, this is actually really good. I'm really enjoying this movie. I don't know what people are talking about. I don't know what people are getting so angry about. It just felt like everything I enjoyed about the first film. A good setup. Again, in Arkham Asylum, really laying the groundwork there. We introduced some ideas about identity for the Joker that I thought were kind of interesting for this movie, and then you had a fun cartoon opening, which was pretty cool, and I thought it opened pretty strong. Throughout this entire movie, actually, there's an interesting idea of what people want out of Arthur and the Joker. It's kind of like the situation where one person's kind of like fighting for Arthur, another person's fighting for Joker, and then Arthur's kind of in the middle of it all, unsure what he wants. But that's, so it has something kind of interesting that it wants to say about that, but that's the thing. This movie seems like it was beginning to say something interesting, like it was trying to have commentary on, like, again, identity and just kind of like who Arthur is and what he does, but it never actually says anything. Like, you look back at the entire movie and you're just like, what did this movie actually say? It spent, 2 hours and like 20 minutes talking and going on about stuff and having characters go on giant long tangents, but it's not saying anything new. The movie is not able to justify its existence beyond making it for money, making it as a fun creative experiment, just to see how audiences will react. This whole movie just really feels like Todd Phillips just kind of like giving a middle finger to the audience, and then, seeing how people are going to react, seeing like, oh, did you actually get the first Joker movie? I don't know, I'm sure they were trying to make a decent film here. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's not saying anything that the first movie hadn't already said. It's kind of boring. It's just not doing enough to keep your interest. It's repeating itself constantly without moving the story or characters forward. That's a big problem. I mean, just the second half of this movie, really, in general, is just going in circles constantly. Like, it's like character talks for a while about, you know, identity, and then, a musical number happens, and then we go back to another character talking about stuff, and it's just not enough to keep you interested, and that's the problem. Another problem I have is Harley Quinn, the way she's handled in this film. I like Lady Gaga a lot. She's a very talented singer, and she kind of, really gives it her all, but I did not like the way the character was handled here. Normally the character of Harley Quinn is someone who is very influenced by Joker and gets kind of manipulated by him, falls for him deeply, and kind of just goes mad. And in this movie, I don't want to spoil anything. It's just that she's not really the character I know and love from the comics. Even in the more recent interpretations of her that have kind of been more independent of Joker, I don't really think this movie captured the spirit of either of those. She just kind of feels wasted here. And I didn't think even Lady Gaga's performance was that memorable, just because the character didn't have much to do. To me, that was probably the most disappointing aspect of this movie, actually, because I think there was just so much potential for a compelling Joker Harley relationship. Even, even if Arthur's character isn't someone who's inherently manipulative, I just think there was a lot of room to do something interesting here, and they kind of didn't. So that was very disappointing to me. Another thing is I thought the ending was very lame. I think they were trying to be all clever and cute about it. I got it, but it wasn't earned at all, really. It just kind of happened, and in the moment, I wasn't mad about it. I wasn't some people are really enraged over it. I wasn't, it was just honestly more depressing than anything else, because you watch the whole movie, it gets to this point, and that's really the point where it all comes together and you realize nothing actually amounted to anything interesting. The whole movie just feels like a waste of time, a waste of money. It's not even that bad, but it's very disappointing and it's very underwhelming. It's extremely forgettable, which is ironic for a movie that takes such bold and big swings. It's it's artsy, but it's not saying anything that great. It puts on this giant presentation. Even the title, which sounded very fancy at the time, like Folie, Deux, but it's just, it sounds all French, and it's cool and it's artsy, and you have a musical and it's dancing, and it just seems like it's putting on this giant show for you to say it's really worth watching, and then it's not actually doing anything all that interesting. It's just not communicating anything that we didn't already know. And that's my big issue. Really, the worst part of this film is that it can't justify its own existence. And that's, a major crutch for the sequel. I still really like the first film, and walking out of Joker 2, my initial reaction was just, it was pretty mediocre. Very, I'm mixed on it a little bit. The more I think about it, though, and the more time I give thought to it, I just realize how much of a waste of time it was, and it actually makes the first film even a little less special, because it kind of removes that great mystery about it of what was real. How could you watch it and reinterpret it? It kind of takes that away, and I think that makes this movie even worse. So I think it gets a C minus from me. It's not awful. I think some people have been a little too harsh on it. If you're really hating it, I think you're not honestly looking for anything to like about it. I think, again, technically this is a very impressive film. Just narratively, it really falters. I just really wish the movie had more to say personally, but I guess the joke was on me. And now, moving on from Joker, let's talk about Megalopolis, or as I like to call it, MegaSLOPolis. So this is gonna be a little bit, probably, it's gonna be a bit of repeating myself from Joker, but because these are two movies that actually kind of pair together perfectly, because they're both huge budget movies that kind of just got past the studio system. They're kind of big, bold visions that just kind of fall flat, and All right, let's get into it. So, this film is by Francis Ford Coppola, and if you are not familiar with the man, he is a very well acclaimed director. He did movies like The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. Really, like, he is one of the big all timers in the film director world, and this was his big passion project. He self financed this movie for, which was a $120 million budget. If you can imagine financing $120 million to make a passion project, it just shows how crazy the man is. But, so he spent so much money on this. This movie's never really had a smooth sailing experience, though, because even after this movie was made, it launched at the Cannes Film Festival to very mixed reception, with some people calling it amazing, other people calling it, a modern version of Tommy Wiseau's The Room. And, then the trailer came out, and apparently the people who made the trailer used fake AI quotes from other critics to describe Coppola's other movies, so the trailer was taken down and was put back up. The movie had barely any marketing, and the movie bombed. Both Joker and Megalopolis actually are doing terrible financially. I mean, Joker did like 3 times less what the original film did opening weekend. Megalopolis, get this, it cost $120 million to make. Opening weekend, it made $4 million. And so anyway, though, this movie comes out, I go see it because I'm interested, and I don't know what Francis Ford Coppola was thinking. I don't see the vision. I mean, I see what he was going for, like, visually. It's a very different movie. Like, it really feels like someone who just threw everything at the wall and just wanted to see what stuck. There's a vision here. Like, you can see what he was going for, but it's so incoherent. That's the main issue with this movie. It's one of the most incoherent movies I've ever seen. I did not know what to take away from this movie. It's so bizarre, because like, characters will be talking for so long about certain, the way the world is, and they'll be going on about, like, the political system they have and everything, and but they're not saying anything. Like, I literally could not understand what they were talking about, because they talk in this weird language that's not normal. I mean, they're talking in English, but, like, it might as well have been gibberish, because I did not take away anything. Several scenes I was just like, what am I watching here? It's just a very incoherent film, and everyone looks like they're trying, like, everyone involved, Coppola, I'm sure, was, like, really trying to make this a great movie, and the cast even looks like they're kind of trying here, like, Adam Driver's here, Aubrey Plaza, even Shia LaBeouf, who really should not be in this movie given his history, but he's here. Natalie Emmanuel, Giancarlo Esposito is here, and they're all trying, but it just sounds like nobody got it. Like, even Giancarlo, I heard an interview with him where he was basically talking about, like, he didn't understand what this movie even was while they were filming it. And at the very end, like, at the last scene, I think he said he figured it out, and he was, like, crying, I think. He thought it was beautiful, but I don't know. I didn't get it. I just don't think the movie makes any sense. It's a terrible script, in my opinion. I literally, again, had no clue what this movie was about or what it was trying to say beyond a very base level. You can take away the most minimal interpretation, but it does not excuse the 2 hours or so that you're just, like, very lost and unsure what to make of it. Which, not to mention even the, but has piss poor pacing. This movie just goes by at such a slow pace that I was just bored for most of this movie. Even though it's, like, balls to the wall insane, like, the visuals here range from being absolutely incredible to being, like, 2004 CGI, sometimes dazzling visuals, sometimes very outdated. And that's what's just a bit weird about it. Like, it's just very boring. This movie also has very bizarre direction. There's weird performances, like, people talk very strangely, and that's not, I don't blame the actors for that. I think people need to understand when actors, are maybe giving a performance you don't like, you have to kind of question, is this the actor's fault or is it the director's fault? But it was weird performances. The editing is also really strange. Like, it'll just, like, cut to black a bunch of times, and there's one scene where, like, it's just a small box at the bottom of the screen, and if you watched it in theaters or on TV, it's gonna look really weird like that, but the actual reason the scene is like that, it's a scene where Adam Driver's giving, like, an interview. It's because the movie was intended, or at least at the cons showing, it was like this, and they had a few showings around the world like this, where, a staff member, like, comes in with a microphone and talks to talks to Adam Driver in the movie, kind of like a 4D show or something. I don't know. If you didn't get that in theaters, though, then it just comes across as really awkward and pointless. And that's kind of where I'm coming from, because even knowing that was the intention, it just still makes no sense. And there's really just a lack of clarity in anything in the film. Like, there's just no real world building. Characters just have devices that they use, and it's not even clear what the devices do. And so I don't know, the whole thing just feels like a weird fever dream. Characters just start, like, twitching and I don't know, it makes no sense. And to some people, that's the brilliance of it. To me, that was just kind of its downfall. It's sometimes a guilty pleasure, because some scenes are just so ridiculous, I kind of just laughed at them. Others are baffling and, again, boring and pretty stupid. I don't know. I don't really have as much to say about this film. It's an admirable production. It's something that, like, I personally, I kind of commend Francis Ford Coppola for putting his money where his mouth is, and he's like, I want to be remembered for this movie. I'm going to spend over $100 million on it, and I'm going to make it the exact way I always envisioned it. Credit to the man. He did it. He made the movie. Downside is no one watched it, and, a lot of people aren't liking it, but I give him credit for that. It's just a very pitiful production, though, in that sense. Like, I really can't... I really feel bad for a lot of the people in this, because it really makes everyone out to be a fool. Like, all these people involved, they're, like, very talented people. But if you just watch this movie without knowing that, it looks very amateur, and it looks very confused of, like, what was going on here. What was the intention? So, I don't know. It's a very sloppy film. As I said, that's why it's called MegaSLOPolis. But, yeah, I don't like this movie. This is a terrible movie. I give it a D. And, just to kind of say how bizarre this movie is, I went on a weekday. There weren't a lot of people there. Two of the people in my theater walked out about a half hour in. There was one other guy sitting in the corner of the front row, like, probably the worst seat in the entire theater. He stayed through the whole thing. Credit to the man. I don't know what he was there for, but he clearly got what he wanted. And that's comparing to Joker 2, where I kid you not, I had an entire IMAX theater all to myself, not a single other soul there. So that was pretty wild. Both of these movies are flops, and that's why I'm talking about them. I might as well get that out there. So anyway, that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.